Hi, and welcome to this webinar titled Budgeting Basics. This is the first of a four-part series where we're focusing on financial wellness. In today's webinar, you'll hear important topics covered like the benefits of budgeting. We'll cover strategies for building a budget that works for you and your family, also ways to repay debt, and suggestions for decreasing your expenditures. The primary content in this webinar is about 35 minutes, and then at the end we took quite a few questions and answers, but if you just want to listen to the content, it will end at around 35 minutes. There's also a budgeting worksheet that goes along with this that we discussed during the webinar, and you can find that link right next to the video link that you clicked on the ERS webinar archives page. Our speakers today work for the Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner and have been so wonderful to partner with us on this important topic. First speaker today's name is Andrea Johnson, and she is the Grant and Financial Education Coordinator for the Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner. Andrea has more than 15 years of professional experience working in the news industry. She won an Emmy in 2016 for Best Daytime Newscast, while she was working as an executive producer for a news station in Austin. Her motto is question everything. She's married with 2 small children. She has 2 dogs and a cat, and she loves to quilt, sew, and craft. Christine Graham, who took all the questions at the end of the presentation, is the supervising financial examiner with the Texas Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner. Christine has more than 20 years of experience working within the field of consumer credit, including previous experience as a certified consumer credit counselor and a HUD-approved housing counselor. In her current role at the OCCC, she supervises the Financial Education Department, the Consumer Assistance Department, and she coordinates training and development for the Examination Enforcement Division. Christine graduated summa cum laude from St. Edward's University with a Bachelor's of Arts degree, and she also holds an MBA from Western Governors University. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me at wellness@ers.texas.gov. I'd love to hear from you. Enjoy the webinar.
I am the Grant and Financial Education Coordinator, and with me today, as she mentioned, is Christine Graham. Before we get started today, I want to say that this webinar is for informational purposes only, and it does not constitute legal advice. And I want to also go over a little bit about the agency and what we do. The Texas Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner is responsible for licensing and regulating certain non-depository institutions. The OCC protects consumers from misrepresentation, fraud, and deceptive practices. We provide consumer assistance and education to help people understand their rights and responsibilities and assist with complaints and inquiries regarding our licensed and registered industries. The Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner, we license pawn shops and payday loan companies, and our office registers debt management and manufactured housing creditors. So pretty much when you're driving down I-35 and you see all of those pawn shops and payday loan companies, we have we are a part of them, so to speak. They have to work with us and we work with them. The Consumer Assistance Team with the Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner reviews concerns or complaints, investigates, and acts as a mediator between you and the creditor to come to a resolution. So if you have problems with those areas, then you need to give us a call. And if you do call us, here's the number. We are ready and standing by to help you. We provide financial education through services like me, through informational seminars and webinars like this one and the one we are hosting next week. We also provide financial education materials. We do public service announcements and press releases. For instance, if there's Christine made a television debut a few months ago to help answer some questions for a news station. And you can contact us through our website, occc.texas.gov, and we partnership with other education-oriented organizations as well, mostly through our Texas Financial Education Endowment. So again, I want to point out today this webinar is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Let's talk about some benefits to budgeting today. There are several benefits to budgeting. It gives you control of your finances. It helps you set financial goals. It organizes your spending and helps you plan for what you want. Because, making sure you're breaking down your budget doesn't mean you shouldn't include things that you want. So, how many of you are already budgeting? It is about a 60-40 split. So several of you are already budgeting, and that's great. And the other 40%, hopefully we'll have some answers to your questions today and help you get things rolling when it comes to budgeting to help relieve that financial stress that you might be feeling when it comes to running short at the end of the month, especially if you're a state employee who's only getting paid at the beginning of the month. The end of the month might seem like a little bit of a crunch. So here is the budgeting basics worksheet that is a handout, and you'll see that there are some financial goals listed at first. So you list some things that you want to achieve and give them a monetary value. And you also need to calculate your income, and you'll be able to do this on this spreadsheet. The handout is a fillable PDF, so you can take it straight from this webinar and start placing things into these different categories that you see in front of you. There's information for your fixed bills and your variable bills, and just to kind of give you a basic worksheet to get started on. So let's talk about those budgeting categories. You'll want to first look at your fixed expenses like your housing. This is going to be your rent and your mortgage. It includes property taxes, homeowners or renters insurance, if those things aren't already figured into what you're paying on a monthly basis. You want to look at your transportation. You're talking about your car maintenance, your gasoline, public transportation expenses, and parking. And then when we talk about utilities, we are also including your cell phone. So electricity, water, gas, trash, and cell phone services. And insurance. Now, when it comes to being a state employee, of course, your health insurance is taken out, and life insurance, unless you have a secondary life insurance plan, is also taken out of your gross income. And then you're talking about, you also want to include your auto insurance. So other budget categories you want to focus on, like food. For instance, this isn't just talking about how much you're spending on groceries. It's also talking about eating out. I can tell you this last Saturday, I decided I did not want to cook at all. We did, donuts for breakfast. We did Bush's chicken for lunch. We did pizza for dinner, and I bought a cake. And I ran through how much I spent just on buying food out that day. It was $85. And that's nearly half my grocery budget for a week. So that's something to definitely, sometimes you can splurge on those things and have a day like that, but it's probably best not to do that all the time. So you also want to include in these budget categories entertainment like Netflix. Some of you might have Prime accounts. Disney Plus is really popular right now. Miscellaneous things can include extra funds for all the things that come up during the month. Personal spending, like a Saturday run to Target. I have quite a few less of those going on right now, but it had gotten to a point where my 3-year-old woke up Saturday morning and asked if we were going to the red store. And always remember to pay yourself first. So put things into savings. And if you can, give to your favorite charitable cause. And let's look. How much do you think you are spending on extras already? So do you think you're spending 20%, 30%, 40%, more than 40%? Like 34% of you say you're using 20% of your income for extras, and then 42% say 30% of your income for extras. So looks like those are doing 40% or more. It's about 5%. So we probably want to work on some of those numbers. Moving forward, how much do you put in each of those categories? Well, you need to review your receipts, credit card, and bank statements to figure out what you're spending in them on a regular basis. You can always have a guesstimate, but I, for one, would have to take a hard look at my bank statements and figure out exactly what I'm spending on those extras. Like I mentioned, an $85 a day on, eating out and feeling like I just didn't want to cook. So before you start doing a budget, it's good to track all of your spending beforehand. So maybe take a month before you really want to sit down and outline a budget and take a hard look at what you're spending on a regular basis to kind of help figure out what you need to put in those categories. When it comes to budgeting, first, I want you to gather all your fixed monthly bills and calculate the total. Your examples of this will include your mortgage, your rent, your car payment, your car insurance, and any possible student loans. I'm very fortunate. My student loans were paid off about 2 years ago, so that's something I don't have to worry about. You also need to estimate your variable monthly bills. You need to look at your personal spending, entertainment, food, and miscellaneous spending. As I mentioned, if you track it first, it's going to be much easier for you to budget. So when we're talking about budget strategies, there are several different techniques that you can use. For instance, we do budgeting percentages. There is the 50-30-20 technique, the 80-20 technique, and the zero-based budgeting technique. I kind of land somewhere between zero-based budgeting and 80-20. When we talk about budgeting techniques, you should base your categories and what you spend on your net income. And you also need to take into account that since you're a state employee or a former state employee, you might be a retiree today, you want to take into account that you're already saving 9.5% because you're a state employee. And so that's factoring in that's going into retirement and other state employee benefits that we might have. So where it says 10% into your savings, it would be nice if you could save the additional 10% in savings on top of what's already being saved. But don't beat yourself up on that because you already are saving something. And when it comes to budgeting, everyone is different, and there are plenty of guidelines to creating a budget and how to be spending in these different categories. Now, the percentages you see in front of you are based on your total after-tax income, but before 401k, medical insurance, or other contributions you might be making. And that is talking about what you're already saving. So these budget categories are also based on the assumption that you're carrying no debt except a mortgage. If you have credit card debt or student loan debt, like we just mentioned, or other monthly payments that are not accounted for, you should reduce discretionary categories. For one, I noticed someone mentioned childcare in the chat box. Childcare is something I have to budget monthly. I know it's going to happen. I pay it every 2 weeks. And that's just something that I have to take into account until they reach a certain age and they're going to school. So, but I want everyone to remember today that we're all different, and you might spend a little less or a little more in each of these categories, and that's okay. I just want you to plan and track what you are spending and match those to your own percentages, and kind of just use these percentages as a guideline of something you could kind of base what you should be spending in these different categories. So here are 2 different budget ratio techniques. They are based on your take-home pay, so your net income. The first is 50% of your income goes towards your needs, 30% goes towards your wants, and 20% then goes into savings. And it might sound like a high number, that 20%, but like I just mentioned, state employees, you're already saving about 9.5% from your gross. So you're really only looking at another 10% towards savings and debt repayment. So another way is to do 20% into your savings and debt, and then a remaining 80% goes toward everything else. And this might be easier for you just to look at the overall picture and know, okay, I need to take this much of my money every month and put it away or put it towards the debt, and then the 80% goes towards all of my miscellaneous spending, my housing, food, entertainment, things of that nature. And that might just help you have a good guideline of what you need to be spending. There's also zero-based budgeting, and this means you will balance your income and your expenses. Here, every dollar has a purpose. It's the same idea as the envelope method. And you take your income and subtract your expenses down to zero. And that's why I said I kind of do a combination of zero-based budgeting and 80-20, because I have to see everything in each little category, but the percentage that I'm spending kind of comes down to that 80-20. So here's what a budget might look like for you. This uses the budgeting percentages that we just discussed. This is an example of zero-based budgeting as well. You notice on this budget, there is a student loan. So in order to pay it, we have to reduce our spending in other categories like entertainment, personal spending, and miscellaneous. Where, I had that student loan, I now have childcare. So in order to make sure I'm covering that monthly expense of childcare, because regardless of whether or not your kid goes to daycare, they still, the company is not going to hold your spot if you're not paying them to. So in my world, the student loan is replaced with childcare. This is an example of using the same budget, but the 50-30-20 and the 80-20 techniques. Now you'll see, like I've mentioned, when it comes to doing these budgets, everyone is going to have some fluctuation in how much they're actually spending in each category. You'll see that the needs on this one is 52%, wants is 25%, and savings and debt is 23%. So it's not an exact hard and fast percentage that you have to beat yourself up about in order to get to. For one, we want to have some financial wellness. We don't want to cause more financial stress by not only having to work on the budget and look at the budget, but then go, it has to be 50%, it has to be 30%, it has to be 20%. Do what works best for you and your family, and try to just kind of come close to those percentages. You'll notice savings and debt for the 80-20 is 23% and 77% for everything else. So you really just need to outline what you have and try to fit it what works best for you, and don't stress about it. Don't add more problems and solutions while you're trying to build a budget. That's really important to keep in mind, that budgeting is supposed to help you feel better about your finances and not make you feel worse. So let's talk about debt repayment. So when we talk about debt repayment, there are a few things you can do. For instance, debt snowball. This means you make the minimum payment on everything, and anything extra goes to the smallest balance, regardless of interest rates. But when it comes to the debt avalanche, you would pay the minimum payment on everything, and anything extra goes to the highest interest rate, regardless of the balance. So some people might feel better paying off, a credit card that has a $500 balance, and you pay it off real quickly, and you get to see that done and gone, and it's over. Now, when you focus on the highest interest rate, you're not necessarily, you're doing the minimum payments on those credit cards with the smaller balances, and you're trying to plug more money into the highest interest rate card and paying it down. And that's probably going to take you a little bit longer to see, to see that gratification, to have that gratification of paying something off. It might be a little bit harder because, in this day and age, we're used to clicking on a button and it being done and taken care of, and you get to see immediate results. Now, one thing you could do is try to consolidate your credit cards. Depending on fees involved, balance transfers may work. Several companies offer 0% interest for a set amount of time, and when you consolidate and do balance transfers to their credit card. However, that is for a set amount of time. So if you're going to consolidate credit cards onto a lower interest rate card, you need to be aware, am I going to actually get this paid off before this special term runs out? If you haven't already stopped using credit cards or other debt to finance living expenses, you should definitely stop doing that. It's very cyclical. If you're finding at the end of the month you have run out of money and you're like, oh, I just need my credit card, and you're using your credit card, well then you're paying it off, but then you're going to be short again that money that you just used to pay off your credit card the following month. And so it's just going to keep going and going and going. Another way to work on debt repayment is to try to allocate extra money to debt repayment. So if you have any part-time job or raises or anything like that, you can just automatically start putting that money towards debt repayment. You also can ask for lower interest rates. I always say it never hurts to ask. You can always call your banks. You can always call your credit card companies. They may not work with you, but they might. You never know. They might look at your situation and, work with you for lowering your interest rates and helping you get that card paid down faster. So while we're talking about debt repayment, decreasing debt, all of those things today, and budgeting, we want to also think about suggestions for increasing income. And you might have your own. Go ahead in the chat box if you have some suggestions on increasing income, and it doesn't necessarily mean leading to a second or third job, or maybe it does. Go ahead and share those with us today. One thing you can do is check your paycheck deductions. Are you having optional deductions you could eliminate? Are your tax withholdings appropriate? Are all members of your household who work, are they chipping in? So if you've got some teenagers in the house who are, they have a part-time job or whatever, make sure they're paying for their own gas money. Maybe if you're living in a multi-generational household, make sure all members of the family who are working are contributing in some way, maybe paying towards groceries. Do you qualify for government benefits? That's one thing you definitely want to look into, see if there's something out there that might be beneficial to you. I know that there are some benefits for being a state employee when it comes to your student loans. Do you and can you get a part-time job? A few hours in the evening, maybe, or working from home. I know someone mentioned on here that they are working part-time. They suggested DoorDash. So that's one option. All of those, delivery companies like Uber Eats and DoorDash and Grubhub and all of those things are so popular right now, especially with a lot of restaurants not being completely open. So that might be helpful. And also, while you're sitting at home right now, well, many of us are still sitting at home working from home, and you look around your house and you see all these things and you're like, when is the last time I used, for instance, an extra large dog crate that I had sitting in my garage collecting dust? So I put that on Facebook Marketplace and sold it to someone who had just recently adopted a dog and needed its own little house. I call them dog houses inside my house. I always tell my dogs to go in their house. And they really like it. But that extra large dog crate wasn't doing me any good just sitting there collecting dust. So that helped. That brought in a little extra money. So while we're talking about increasing income, let's talk about decreasing expenses. So when it comes to grocery shopping, consider shopping alone or using curbside or delivery. It's easier to track exactly what you were spending when you're not randomly pulling things off the shelf. I always think of the fact that there is a reason why stores are laid out, that the toothpaste is on one side and the milk is on the other. That's so that I have to walk through all the other areas of the store in order to put random stuff in my cart that I wouldn't have needed. It also helps, I think, to do curbside or delivery when you're hungry, because everyone knows that when you shop hungry, for some reason, Oreos wind up in your cart, or something salty, or something else that's sweet, and you didn't need it in the first place. Right now, a lot of people, a lot of us are still working from home. So the second one, taking your lunch to work, and not eating out as much might not work for everyone, but if you are going into the office, I know when I was going into the office every day, I did take my lunch to work. I don't like the idea of being starving and, oh no, I have to go do XYZ to go get food, but I'm in the middle of something and I know I can eat my food because nothing comes between me and my food. Next is entertain at home. This one isn't necessarily entertaining at home, but I think about the fact that people are doing drive-by birthday parties, where someone just drives by the house, they decorate their car and they honk and wave. Well, then you're not having to feed all these people coming to your house. You're not buying party favors for all these people coming to your house. You are, just making it still a celebration, but it's not costing you hardly anything. One thing to do is shop at the end of the season. I learned just recently from one of my mom friends that Target and Walmart do toy clearance usually in July, and some things are marked down to 80%. And when she mentioned this to me, I went online and it's almost a secret society talking about these toy markdowns. But what she does with her budget, since she has a large extended family, is during the off season, she buys a lot of gifts for her extended family because they have lots of kids in their family. So when birthdays come up, when Christmas comes along, when any kind of social gathering that requires a gift, she can go into her closet, pull a gift off the shelf, wrap it, and call it a day. And it looks like someone else says they have been doing that for years. I think it is one of the best things to be doing to help save you money, because when it gets closer to Christmas or holiday seasons, you're going to find that, oh man, I need a gift, or somebody goes, oh, it's little Johnny's birthday this Saturday, you're invited, and you go, what? And so you just go to the closet, grab that gift, wrap it up, and you're ready to go. And it costs you, maybe 50 to 80% less than if you had to run out the door and buy it right then and there. So one of the other ways to decrease your expenses is to reduce spending in non-essential categories like housekeeping, memberships, and service plans like cable and phone. We cut the cable strings a long time ago because we were not paying for, we weren't watching a lot of the sports channels. We don't need 50 million sports channels. We don't need a whole bunch of, I come from the news, but we mostly watch local news. So I don't need 50 million news channels. And so those things were not beneficial to me. So we just do a yearly subscription. And I know when that comes out, it comes in the spring. So also one thing to suggest is phone data. I get a lot of notes from my phone company saying, oh, hey, increase your data or whatever. And I'm like, well, I'm not using the data. So why would I pay you more for more data that I'm not going to use? So make sure you're looking at that when you get your cell phone bill. Are you paying for more than what you use? I had already paid, another example of that is I had already paid off one of our cell phones. We had it where it was budgeted into the monthly bill. And when I went to the phone company and I said, hey, let's look at my bill. And they were like, well, this has been paid off. And I'm going, but I'm still paying $10 extra a month to cover the cost of this phone. Why? They're not going to call you and tell you you're giving them too much money. So make sure you're checking things out like that. So as we're talking about increasing our income and we're talking about decreasing our expenses, we are also talking about if your after-tax pay isn't enough to cover all of your expenses, then you need to adjust those categories that we talked about earlier, all those budgeting categories. When your income increases, don't increase your spending, stick to the same budget. I always think like maybe you just automatically have that extra, if you know you're going to get a pay raise, sack that money away somewhere else right off the top. Set up a direct deposit that automatically takes that new income out. If you can, pay off debt and save the extra money when it comes in, and Please prevent late payments because late payments have late fees. So when you go, oh, well, it doesn't matter. I'll just pay this a little late this month. Well, if your late fees are $15, that was $15 you could have stuck in your savings account. So also more into that, lose that extra paycheck mentality. When you do have a surge of extra income, don't try to spend the extra cash on items you don't need. That's another problem we might face. Consider placing it in a savings account, like I just mentioned, for emergencies, or paying more than the minimum payment on credit cards and loans. And also, don't forget to factor in expenses you may pay on a less frequent basis, such as annual tax payments or car registration fees. I used to love it because before we bought our new car, our car registration fees were due in January and June, and now they're going to be back to back in May and June because we bought a new car in May. And I'm already not looking forward to it because I'm used to that 6-month gap where I don't need to come up with the extra $75 to pay my registration fees to drive my car, but kind of need that. So I see someone posted that if you do have a late fees, you can always ask to get them reversed. That's a good point. And like I said, it never hurts to ask. So it never hurts to ask to lower those interest rates. And if you have a late fee, it never hurts to ask to get that late fee taken off of there. A lot of companies will work with you in order to keep you as a customer. So when we're talking about budgeting, we also want to talk about setting goals, and we want to focus on meeting those goals. Short-term goals are going to be less than a year. Intermediate goals are 1 to 4 years, and long-term goals are going to be 4 years. Will take 4 years or more. So short-term goals could include an emergency savings account, small household repairs, or even a weekend getaway. Intermediate goals might include a down payment on a vehicle, extended vacation, or major home repairs. Long-term goals might include larger things like a down payment on a house, buying a new boat, or retirement. We all, most people probably don't want to work their entire lives. So focusing on retirement at any age is something that's great for you to be budgeting and thinking ahead. Do you already have short-term, intermediate, and long-term goals? So 64% of you say yes, you do have some goals set in mind. And that's good to know because those goals are going to help you budget. Really, if you focus on something you really want, really need, like for instance, my husband and I have our garage is a band room. So financially, one of our goals is to put air conditioning in the band room because that was not something we took care of off the top. And it is a financial goal that we talk about all the time. And it's kind of like where he sees this new guitar that he wants, I go, but we need air conditioning in the band room. And so instead of doing those impulse purchases that delay us getting to that financial goal, that's what we focus on as a team. So we want you to achieve your financial goals. And here are some suggestions. You need to write them down and make them visible. Maybe you have a marker board by your front door, marker board in your bedroom, maybe just on a little piece of cardstock. Write what you want down and put it somewhere that reminds you that's what you really want. You don't necessarily need, you don't necessarily need or want a $100 pair of tennis shoes when those $100 could go into your goal budget. I see someone said communication is key, and that is right. Everyone needs to be on the same page. That is my third point on this slide. But let's talk about how much it will cost these goals, not just the monetary cost. Consider your support system and sacrifices. See, Bridget says everyone needs to be on the same page, and she's right. And you need to communicate those financial goals with the people who live in your house, and you need to rank them in a way that is important to you and to your family members. Now, also, it's best to set a timeline. Use this timeline to determine the monetary line item in your budget. For example, if your goal is $1,000 for a new car down payment over the next 18 months, you'll need about $56 a month to save up for that. And so, like I said, we splurged last Saturday and we spent $85 on eating out. Well, that was something we could have put into the band room air conditioning fund, but both of us parents with two little ones in the house, we said, no, we're going to order pizza. But today we want you to remember to be flexible about your goals while keeping your eye on the prize. You may have to reset or compromise, and a setback does not mean you are unsuccessful. You still have that goal. Your financial goals are achievable no matter how large they are. As long as you are writing them down, you are communicating with those that you love, and you are considering not only the cost, the monetary cost, but the sacrifices you're going to have to make, because it's a process when it comes to goal setting. And it's not only going to affect your finances, but setting goals is good for your career. It's good for self-improvement. It's good for your education and your overall financial wellness. Because one of the things you want to do when you're focusing on these goals is you don't want to become burdened by building this budget. Like I said earlier, when it comes to the percentages, everyone is going to fluctuate as you're building your budget. And you're going to look at these percentages, and yes, it's an 80-20. Yes, it's a 50-30-20, or 10% into savings, 25% into housing and rent. Those are all going to fluctuate with what is important to you and what is necessary for you to achieve your financial goals and to achieve your monthly budget and not feel stressed out. Because one of the big takeaways from budgeting is that it can not only help you figure out your bills, but it's going to help you ease the impulse for the cash crunch at the end of the month. It's going to help you save money and hopefully, meet those goals that you have set for yourself. It'll heal your credit score, because we're also going to be paying down your debt as you are working on this budget, which is going to help you save some time and hopefully mental, emotional, maybe even physical stress. And budgeting will also help you take control of your finances. So all of those things are going to go back. You may look at a budget and go, oh, it's a numbers crunch. Oh, I have to sit down and fill out this spreadsheet. I have to, outline all these different things that I'm spending. And then I have to see all the money come in and I see all the money come out, which can be very defeating. But it'll also help you focus on your goals. It'll help you set aside money for your goals, and that is an important part of looking ahead to tomorrow. And that's what's also important and help you with your financial wellness. And we are at the end of the presentation today and ready to take questions. Again, my name is Andrea Johnson, and with me today is Christine Graham. She is great when it comes to finances. I am really proud to be a part of her team. So let's see.
So this is Christine, everybody. If you have questions, you can type them in the chat and I'll try to get to them. I thought I'd just run through a couple that I saw that were asked during the presentation. A few people looks like they had questions about student loans and student loan forgiveness. So as a state employee, you may qualify for public student loan forgiveness. You have to be employed by, the federal, state, or government or a nonprofit to work full time. You need to have direct loans. You need to be repaying those loans under a specific type of repayment plan. And then you need to make 120 qualifying payments. So that is something as state employees that I would certainly encourage you to look into if you have student loans. The first step in doing that is to call your student loan servicer and make sure that you're on the correct repayment plan that will qualify for public student loan forgiveness. There's a lot of information about public student loan forgiveness at the website studentaid.gov. So you might want to check that out. Looking here at the chat box.
Here's a question that says, how to budget when your spouse doesn't?
So that's really tricky. And that comes down to the communication and the teamwork part of this. Would encourage trying to maybe sit down and see if there are some areas where maybe you can come to some sort of agreement. And I would probably do that in baby steps. Sometimes, ultimately everybody wants their finances to be in good shape. So sometimes it's just people think it'll be too hard or they don't know where to start. So perhaps going over this presentation with your spouse might be a good place to maybe see, well, what things might you be willing to do and go from there. I see another question here. Are debt relief companies a good idea? We are having another webinar on credit and credit basics and disputing credit and inaccurate information, and that's next week. But generally, I can tell you that it really just depends. And your situation might factor into that a little bit, but there are some companies that are like credit repair companies who do disputes for you, and those are usually charging you a fee to do something you can do pretty easily on your own, but we'll certainly talk more about that next week. Okay, let's look here. How do you decide which wants you should satisfy and which ones aren't a good idea? That is a good question. That's a, very personal question. I think that you probably should do a ranking of what's really important to you versus, what's the number one thing. For me, it's really important that I have X, and then under that I want to have Y, and then sort of look at those overall and determine which ones you might be willing to let go of or sacrifice in order to maybe save for a goal or save more for emergencies or retirement.
Now, Christy, I know during the presentation I saw someone ask about the student loan. Did you answer that one?
I did, yeah, the student loan forgiveness.
That's what I thought.
And that's a great question, because a lot of people tend to think that just by making normal payments on your student loans, you make 10 years of normal payments and it's forgiven, and that's not the case. There's actually a specific type of repayment plan you have to be on. So that's why you should call your student loan servicer to double check that. Someone really likes Dave Ramsey's Every Dollar app. I'm not familiar with that, but I've heard really good things about Dave Ramsey in general. Someone earlier did ask, besides your checking account, reviewing your checking account, what is another way to track spending? So it sounds like Dave Ramsey has an app. Another really popular app people use is called Mint. Quicken is something that a lot of people use that I've heard success stories for. Also, there's an app called You Need a Budget. It's YNAB. That's another one that you might look at, and those kind of will help you track expenses by placing them into categories and tracking your inflow and outflow every month. All right, what do you think about all monthly expenses going to a credit card that's paid off monthly? I think that's fine. There's nothing, as long as it's paid off every month. I think that is a way you certainly could leverage things like reward points and cash back. And as long as it's paid off every month and you're still tracking kind of generally where the money is going, I think that's fine. What is the max percentage of your income that should go to rent or mortgage? So you want to try to stick in Austin, this is hard, but around 25 to 30%. If you need to go a little bit higher than that because of the area that you're living, you certainly could but you would want to make sure that you adjust the areas down that you need to take from. I can tell you that for obtaining a mortgage, they really want the overall debt to income ratio to be 43% or less. And that's everything. That's any debt you have, including the mortgage. So cars, student loans, and that would be kind of a qualifying criteria they would look at, but I would try to stay around 30% for the mortgage itself. Is it okay, another question here, is it okay to settle a balance with companies you owe? I think so. So settlements can be, and I want to talk more about settlements next week with credit a little bit, but if you have something that's gone to collections especially, that is one of the more negative things that can show up on your credit report. And so any way that you can get that balance to show zero as quickly as possible is going to be helpful for your credit score. So if you have something that's in collections and it's, you know, $500 for an old bill and they're willing to take $250 and you get it in writing, I would probably do that, because then it's going to show on your credit report a zero balance right away. The fact that it was in collections will still show on there, but it will show as paid off. So I think it's okay to settle in those situations to get those negative accounts showing zero as quickly as possible. Okay, someone's saying student loan forgiveness is something that they're not quite sure about. Yeah, I would call your servicer to see, make sure that you're on the right path for that. I know I've known a couple people who qualified for it, and then I've known a couple people who were on the wrong type of repayment plan and didn't. If you pay as you go if you pay as you go is $0, then that is counted as you need to be paying. I'm not quite sure if you want to rephrase that question. How do you make sure you are keeping up with your budget? I've written out budget plans, but when I buy things and pay bills, I lose track. I try one of those budgeting apps. And see if that helps you out. Is it a good idea to consolidate? Sometimes it can be a great idea to consolidate debt. You want to look at the terms, obviously. There's lots of different financial products out there. I think that sometimes using like a 0% balance transfer to consolidate several higher interest credit cards can be a really good tool. I say that with the slight caveat that you want to make sure that if it is 0%, you know for how long. If it's just 0% for 6 months, that might not give you enough time to take advantage, especially if it jumps up to a real high rate after that introductory period. But if it's 0% for 18 months, maybe you could try to track, try to set up your budget where you pay it off within that time frame. Watch for fees for balance transfers. They're usually going to have a fee. You want to make sure you know what it is and you understand how much it's going to cost. But the most important thing, and I saw this over and over and over in days when I was doing a lot of housing and credit counseling work, is people would transfer money to a 0% card, but then they wouldn't pay off the card that it came from, and it would just be charged right back up. And then they didn't really consolidate the debt. They had tried to, but then they just kept using the old card, and now they had two instead of one. So that's just a risk factor that you want to watch out for. But taking those things into account, sometimes consolidation can be a good idea.
Christy, I see something that says, how can I budget if my husband gets paid weekly and his pay fluctuates and I get paid monthly? I want to talk to this in the sense that when I was budgeting in the same situation, I was getting a weekly paycheck when I didn't work for the state. I was working retail at the time, and my husband was getting paid bi-weekly. And what I did, since my hours would fluctuate, is I would track over a monthly period the different payment, my different paychecks, and I would try to focus on what would be a low pay for that, the lowest, kind of find the average of those 4 paychecks, or focus on the lowest amount he receives and kind of budget that in so that you don't come up short at the end of the month, or try to figure out what his average pay might be, and then you could budget that into what you're getting on a monthly basis, and then kind of be able to track things that way so that you're not coming up short, because I understand not being able to rely on a paycheck that fluctuates. So kind of focusing on the lower amount, or an average amount that he's getting paid, and doing it that way, that might help you to budget more accurately and try to break down some of those expenses that you have on a monthly basis. That's all.
Okay.
I just wanted to share that. That was something I did.
That's good. That's good information.
I think that helped, because when you do have someone in the household who has that fluctuating pay, it's good to still be able to track, but you can't say, oh, well, he made, $1,000 this week. Ooh, but he made $600 this week. So definitely taking the average, but that's going to have that to me goes back to tracking your, not only are you tracking your expenses at that point, you're going to have to track your income at that point. So you have more an idea of, taking into account those different pay periods and what the average might be, or what the lowest amount might be, and factoring that into your income and your budget, and how to do it that way, because, you don't want to come up short. So
yes, that's very good. Very good advice, for sure. Yeah, and it can be tricky when people are on different different pay cycles. Our consumer credit counseling business is regulated by some agency. If people are, if companies are obtaining concessions from creditors for consumers, then they register with our agency, Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner.
Yep.
Those are regulated in Texas Finance Code Chapter 394, if you wanted to look it up. Do you have any recommendations for debt consolidation companies? There's debt consolidation companies I would sort of look at with, a little carefully. They may have, some different terms and fees and things. Usually with consolidation, I would think of, maybe obtaining a bank or credit union loan to pay off debt to consolidate it into one payment. Also, the zero balance credit, 0% interest credit card that I talked about. Debt consolidation companies probably aren't really consolidating the debt. They're just consolidating your payments, which can sometimes get a little tricky. If an account has gone to collections, call them to settle your debt in writing. Yes, that's absolutely true. You need to get any settlement offers in writing, for sure. See if any other questions. Y'all see any other questions, Lacey or? Yeah.
There are lots of questions coming in. Someone has asked if they can view this course later and share. Absolutely. This will be recorded. It is being recorded, and then we're going to be posting it to YouTube, and I will be sending out the link. It'll take me about a week to get it edited, captioned, and everything, but once we do, I will send that out to everybody. As someone asked earlier, I don't know if you saw the one asking if you can lower the interest rate on your car.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's definitely, I didn't see that one. Yes, you could refinance your vehicle. So you should you can look into that with a credit union or a bank, would be able to help you refinance that.
There's one that says, with the low interest rates, would it be a good time to refinance high interest car loan and low interest rate home loan at the same time, or would it be better to do them one at a time? And would it be beneficial to use the same lender for both or separate loans? So would you do them, would you refinance at the same time for the car loan and the house, or would you wait and do one first and then do the second one later?
I don't know if there's that's kind of a personal choice. I will say, if you are talking about like a home equity loan, that would be a little different than if you're talking about like purchasing a home. If you're talking about a low interest home loan that you're wanting to buy a house, you should do that first and don't do anything else while you are doing that, because you don't want to have a lot of credit activity at the time that you're being qualified for a mortgage. If it's a home equity loan that you mean, you could do that sort of at the same time as refinancing a car, probably with the same creditor. Be really careful with home equity loans. They are great tools for lots of different things, and I've seen lots of times where they've really been good choices for lots of people. But it is a situation where you are getting a loan that has your house as collateral. So if you were not to be able to repay it for some reason, they would be able to foreclose on the house. And interest rates are very low right now. So a lot of people are looking into that, and I think that it can be a really great tool just to be aware of the fact that the house is collateral. A car loan, same thing, the car's collateral. Rates are real low right now, and you could refinance that as well.
We're getting a lot of questions that are going to be perfect for the Credit 101 workshop that is next week. So I just wanted to, if we're not getting to your questions and they have anything to do with credit, most likely that will be covered in next week's webinar, but we will try to go back and answer questions that we didn't get to during the training today as well.
Yeah, I noticed that too. So I think that one is what, next Tuesday, Lacey, at 10?
Yes, it is. And the registration link is on the ERS Wellness Events calendar. We'll throw that link up as well just to make sure everybody has it in case you haven't registered for that one yet.
We have, I can answer a few more questions here. Oh, can I name the budgeting apps again? Yes, Mint is a popular one. Someone mentioned Dave Ramsey has one. I'm not familiar with that one, but I do like Dave Ramsey a lot. So I'm going to check that one out myself. Quicken is a good one that a lot of people use. And there's all different levels of Quicken where you can even almost sort of do your kind of own financial planning and investing with some of their higher level programs. And You Need a Budget, YNAB, is another app that I've had people tell me they find success with.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like a lot of these are credit type questions. I hope we were able to answer your budgeting questions, and we'll talk more next week about credit and debt repayment.
Yes.
Andrea and Christine, thank y'all so much. This was very, very useful, helpful information. I think we had a lot of interaction, and obviously it's a topic that I think we need to continue to come back to, and hopefully we can partner with y'all again to offer this in the future.
Yes, we love reaching out to everybody, and our contact information is on the end of the PDF printout that y'all have. So you can always reach out to us if you have questions about anything we discussed.
Definitely. Thank you for everyone for attending today. And I know Lacey has the handouts available, so you can also contact her. And then again, we are having the credit session next Tuesday, and Lacey has that on the ERS Wellness Events calendar. So everyone, I would like everyone to go ahead and sign up for that one and tell other people to as well.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lacey. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.